You're thinking of feeding your cat a raw meat diet, but you're not sure about the benefits. Will it actually improve your cat's health? And how much does it really cost? Today, we're breaking down the pros and cons of feeding your cat a raw meat diet, so you know exactly what to expect. I am the Cat Butler, and these are my two Ragdoll cats, Teemo and Arya. They've been fed a raw meat diet their entire lives, over 5.5 years, which has given me first-hand experience with both the benefits and the challenges of raw feeding. With that experience in mind, let's break down the pros and cons. What is a raw meat diet? A raw meat diet mimics what cats would eat in the wild. It involves feeding uncooked meat, organs, and bones. Because cats are obligate carnivores, their bodies are built to rely solely on meat for proper nutrition. One of the biggest benefits of feeding a raw meat diet is food quality. You are feeding your cat whole ingredients, real meat, organs, and nutrients in their natural form, not highly processed products. If you ever wondered how kibble or canned food can sit on a shelf for months or even years, that's because it's heavily processed and stabilized. Many commercial pet foods rely on chemicals and preservatives to extend shelf life. Kibble and wet food also contain carbs. Cats don't need carbs, yet they're often included because they're cheap, help bind kibble together, and improve storage stability. Raw food is different. It doesn't need to survive on a shelf at room temperature for a year, because it's meant to be refrigerated or frozen, just like the food we eat ourselves. That alone tells you a lot about how minimally processed it is. I also learned something interesting from a friend who works in pet food manufacturing. If you wanted to manufacture your own pet food brand using a human-grade food facilities that make food for humans, most of these manufacturers wouldn't even allow pet food production in their factories. That is because clients of the human-grade food facility don't want their products made in the same factory as your pet food, knowing how low-quality pet food traditionally is. For example, meat used in traditional kibble or wet food is typically sourced from parts not suitable for sale for human consumption. This often includes leftovers from the slaughter process, such as trimmings and other non-retail cuts, rather than the whole cuts you see at the grocery store. A raw meat diet tends to rely on higher quality ingredients, which can translate to better nutrition for your cat. Cat owners who switch their cat to raw food often notice an improvement in their cat's skin, coat, and health, leading to less shedding and a shinier, healthier coat. Hair is made of 90% protein, meaning a diet rich in digestible animal proteins is crucial for maintaining a strong and healthy coat. A raw diet provides species-appropriate proteins from fresh meats, organs, and bones. Kibble contains low-quality protein from plant sources. Cats absorb protein from meat more efficiently than from plant sources, which helps support stronger hair follicles and less shedding. A raw meat diet also hydrates your cat's skin more. One major cause of excessive shedding is dehydration. Kibble is highly processed and contains only about 10% moisture, while a raw diet consists of 70 to 80% natural moisture. More hydration leads to healthier skin and less shedding. In my own experience with Teemo and Arya, our vets frequently comment on how healthy and beautiful their coats are, and how little they shed compared to their other patients. One benefit of a raw meat diet is improved dental health for your cat. Chewing raw meat and cartilage helps scrape plaque and tartar off teeth, acting like a natural toothpaste. This mimics how cats naturally maintain oral health in the wild, by tearing and chewing prey. A raw meat diet also contains far fewer carbohydrates, which means there are fewer sugars available to feed oral bacteria. With less bacterial growth in the mouth, there is a lower risk of plaque hardening into tartar, unlike kibble-based diets that break down into sugars and contribute to tartar buildup. In my own experience, After switching Teemo and Arya to a raw meat diet and sticking to that diet for over 5 years, their teeth have stayed remarkably clean. Whenever I go to the veterinarian, they are shocked at how little plaque and tartar Teemo and Arya have for their age. While a raw meat diet can contribute to improved dental health, you should still brush your cat's teeth for optimal oral hygiene. One of the most common concerns pet parents and veterinarians raise about raw feeding is the risk of harmful pathogens. These concerns are understandable. Raw meat can carry bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli, which can cause foodborne illness. Humans, however, are far more likely to become ill from Salmonella and E. coli exposure than healthy cats. Cats have stomach acid with a pH of approximately 1 to 2, which is extremely acidic. For example, Salmonella cannot survive in environments below a pH of about 3.8, making the stomach a strong first line of defense against pathogens. Cats also have a short digestive tract, meaning any surviving bacteria generally doesn't have enough time to establish an infection before being passed in the stool. Therefore, the risk of illness is primarily to humans, with immunocompromised individuals being the most vulnerable. You can reduce the risk of illness by practicing proper meat handling and ensuring meat is sourced from clean, reputable suppliers when preparing homemade raw food, or by purchasing raw pet food from companies that rigorously test their products. Some raw pet food companies also use high-pressure processing, or HPP, as a final safety step. HPP uses extremely high pressure without heat to inactivate harmful bacteria and viruses, while preserving the food's raw nutritional integrity. This is considered one of the safest options for reducing pathogen risk in raw pet food. As of 2026, avian flu has been a concern for pet parents that feed raw pet food. Avian flu is a viral pathogen that primarily affects birds, where it can cause respiratory illness, neurological symptoms, and in severe cases, death. Unfortunately, cats can get infected with avian flu, and this can lead to death. Cats typically become infected through contact with infected birds, making this risk higher for outdoor cats. At this time, it is still unclear how common avian flu may be in raw pet food, and whether reported feline cases are directly linked to commercial raw diets, homemade raw food, or exposure from outdoor environments and infected birds. This uncertainty makes it difficult to draw definitive conclusions. What is clear is that most reputable commercial raw pet foods take this risk seriously. They source carefully and often use safety measures such as high-pressure processing, which significantly reduces the likelihood of bacteria and viruses, including avian flu, being present in the final product. In addition, poultry suppliers in the United States operate under strict biosecurity protocols. A single confirmed case of avian flu can require an entire flock to be culled, creating strong incentives for farms to prevent, monitor, and rapidly report outbreaks. For those preparing raw food at home, extra caution is warranted. Personally, when I make my cat's food, I source meat very carefully and regularly check with my suppliers to ask whether there have been any reported avian flu concerns. Based on the sourcing standards and checks I have in place, I've decided to continue feeding Teemo and Arya a raw diet, as I believe their risk of exposure to avian flu remains low. Feeding a raw diet does come with pathogen-related risks. However, careful sourcing, proper handling, rigorous testing, and safety measures like HPP can significantly reduce these risks. Raw diets naturally have a high moisture content, closely mimicking a cat's ancestral prey-based diet. Because cats evolved to obtain most of their water from food and are naturally poor drinkers, dietary moisture plays a critical role in maintaining proper hydration. Adequate hydration supports healthy urine dilution and balance urine pH, which helps reduce urinary tract irritation and the formation of crystals or stones. Over time, this can lower the risk of common issues such as urinary tract disease and kidney stress, particularly in cats prone to dehydration. By providing hydration in a form cats instinctively consume, raw diets help support overall urinary and renal health in a way that aligns with feline physiology. A pro of feeding your cat a raw meat diet is less smelly poop. Raw meat is more biologically appropriate for your cat and easier for their bodies to digest. Because a raw meat diet is high in animal protein and low in carbohydrates and fillers, the cat absorbs more of what it eats and leaves behind less waste. When there's less undigested material fermenting in the gut, there's less gas and fewer odor-producing byproducts. In contrast, diets with higher plant content like kibble and low-quality wet food can lead to increased fermentation in the colon, which contributes to a stronger smelling stool. Whereas a raw meat diet produces a smaller, firmer poop that is less smelly. In my own experience, once Teemo and Arya switched from wet food to a raw meat diet, their poop smell improved dramatically. With wet food, it smelled like death, but with a raw meat diet, I could barely smell their poop. In summary, a properly balanced raw meat diet can significantly reduce poop smell because of improved digestion and nutrient absorption. Feeding your cat a raw meat diet is often more expensive than kibble and wet food, and can cost more upfront due to higher quality ingredients. This is why cost can be a barrier for many cat owners. That said, I was personally surprised to find that when making my own raw food at home for Teemo and Arya, the monthly cost was actually the same or lower than many premium wet food brands. While homemade raw does require more effort, putting in the time can allow you to feed your cat a high quality, healthy diet at a lower cost than many commercial wet foods. Cats on a raw meat diet typically don't become overweight because raw diets are low in carbohydrates and high in animal protein. Protein-rich diets help cats stay lean because cats are built to use protein for energy, not carbohydrates. Protein helps cats feel full, supports lean muscle, and avoids blood sugar spikes that lead to fat storage. As a result, cats eating high-protein diets are less likely to overeat or gain excess weight, which also lowers the risk of developing diabetes. In my own experience, feeding Teemo and Arya a raw meat diet has been great for their weight. Their weight has stayed healthy, and they don't overeat. At each vet visit, the veterinarians are consistently surprised by how little weight Teemo and Arya have gained over the years, especially now that they're older. Traveling with raw food can definitely be a challenge. From my experience, it means bringing a cooler to keep the meat frozen during transit, and making sure wherever I'm staying, whether it's a hotel or an Airbnb, that it has a refrigerator or freezer that can accommodate frozen meat. It's doable, but it does take extra preparation compared to dry or wet food. Raw diets contain fewer processed ingredients, which means fewer artificial additives, fillers, and preservatives commonly found in commercial cat food. By feeding a simple, whole food diet based on raw meat, it reduces unnecessary ingredients that can trigger food sensitivities or allergies. Because raw food is frozen rather than heavily processed, it preserves the natural structure of the protein without chemical preservatives, making it easier for cats to digest and tolerate, especially those with sensitive stomachs. Many pet parents choose to switch to a raw meat diet when their cat has food sensitivities or allergies, and often report noticeable improvements after the transition. Raw meat diets have a much shorter shelf life than kibble or wet food, because raw food is minimally processed and contains no chemical preservatives, it must be kept frozen and used within a limited time once thawed. This requires more freezer space and planning compared to kibble or wet food, which can remain shelf stable without refrigeration for months. Many cats show improved energy levels and overall vitality on a raw meat diet. Because raw food provides highly digestible animal protein and natural fats without unnecessary fillers, cats are better able to absorb the nutrients they need for sustained energy. This results in better mobility and a more engaged, playful demeanor. In my experience feeding Teemo and Arya raw food, they have remained lean, athletic, and energetic, and still move and play like much younger cats. Feeding a raw meat diet offers clear benefits along with some trade-offs, and what works best can vary from cat to cat. Based on my experience, I personally believe raw feeding is one of the best diets you can offer. I've seen Teemo, Arya, and many other cats truly thrive on a raw meat diet. If you'd like to learn more about how to feed a raw diet, I've linked helpful videos in the description below. And if you tried a raw meat diet, I'd love to hear about your experience and share it in the comments.